I always stand in awe of the bells, don't you? I might be able to read the notes, but there's no way I'm coordinated enough to ring those bells. Absolutely no way. So on this day of Pentecost, I want to ask a group question. Now know that I do realize this is dangerous, because you may think about this question throughout the rest of the whole service and not listen to anything else. Or I think I also need to put a little rule out here, which is there is no need to say your answer out loud. You can just keep it to yourself. So the question is, what is the wildest thing you have ever done? It might have been skydiving, or surfing, or skiing on a black diamond mountain. It may have been a trip that you've taken to Machu Picchu, which is where my friends are today. Or it might have been a rock concert. Some of you have heard me say, I don't like rock concerts. I was never that kid that just had to get the tickets. So the wildest thing I have ever done was go to a Stones concert in Dallas. I don't even like the Stones. It was one of those concerts where you could get high, you didn't have to bring anything. I will, though, admit that if I ever had the chance to see Bruce Springsteen live, I would pay for it and I would be there. The closest thing I've gotten to him was a Springsteen mass that we had in 2018. And it was pretty wild, to be honest, even without the boss. We talk about wildness when we talk about Pentecost. And it was, of course, in the midst of a wild world that something extraordinary happened on one particularly wild day that is recorded in the book of Acts. The followers of Jesus in that locked room did not know what was going to happen. And yet our friends at In Flesh that give us so much guidance in theology and liturgy and everything, church, remind us that even though the Spirit did indeed come suddenly, that suddenly occurred in the midst of a very, very long story of God. A story that has always been working to bring life, to bring love, and liberation. This was not the first gathering of people longing for change. This was the ancient unfolding of a story that had been going on for a very long time. The relatively recent events that had involved Jesus' life, death, and life from death had made the people so afraid they truly believed it was the end. So they were all together in that one room, hiding from those who wanted to stop that ancient story from coming to fruition and continuing. When you can't go down any further than you are already, I've heard people say, the ancestors come to you. I know it's a little woo-woo, but go with me. In concert with the collective prayers of the ages, the ancestors can create a particularly open moment. A moment where we are eager and hungry and dreaming again in a new way. And in this place, we may even begin to believe that the ways of God can be born anew among us. Here and now, in the midst of the wilderness, happening around us. Here and now, in the middle of the wildness that is happening in this wilderness. We are planting gardens, not just for the future, but we are planting gardeners for our neighbors right now. As you came up today to put your prayers in the bowl and to light candles, did you catch the fragrance of those beautiful flowers from our cathedral garden? I asked Lori Dill, our director of the Cathedral Gardens this week, if we couldn't start giving out flowers. Were we raising flowers, and could we give them out along with those fabulous greens that are ethnically thought through, and the herbs and the spices and all of those things? I just thought it'd be really sweet if we could give out flowers. And she said, oh yes, we're already doing that. Whenever and wherever we are, God is always calling us forward. God is always calling us to recognize and find ourselves as part of this long story of liberation. But why is that? God is calling us forward because we need to create a new story. In order to do this, we must have some sense of the patterns that exist among us. Patterns that have sadly been born out of white supremacy throughout history. And we must realize how hard it is to break them. Part of our preparation for a Pentecost moment then requires us to commit ourselves with each other. This requires us to be open to our histories, our cultures, our internalized ideas, even who we have been in the past. Most of us gathering today for this Pentecost already have at least some sort of sense of our historic struggles. Both personally, in our world, in our nation, and in this church, where Christian nationalism got some good roots in the 1950s. The historic struggles, you see, are embedded in our identities of privilege. And it takes a great deal of work, it takes a great deal of learning and unlearning to get to that moment when we are ready for the new thing that is just waiting to be born. Positioning this story in the whole story of God helps us turn towards those prophets of old, like Amos. Those prophets who reminded us that God is forever at work, bringing old things to an end and new things into being. Some of us read the Hebrew Bible scriptures and the gospel scriptures, and we think that they are literally exactly as they are written forever. But interestingly, it's up to us to read those and together, humbly, to interpret them for our time. Because then the old story can become new. And when that happens, it will inevitably mean that those who are now neglected, those whose wisdom is dismissed or rejected, those whose material lives have greatly been shaped by the violence of the dominant forces, they will be the ones to lead the way out of them. It will be the young, it will be the old, the women and non-binary people, people who are enslaved under forces of oppression. They will be the ones to tell what God can do and what God can birth among us. And we'll know when we are close, when the outsiders are instead at the center, when the trampled ones are the ones that hold the mic. When the wisdom of those who have struggled is respected and valued. Our friends at In Flesh insist in this next Pentecost, people in all their diversity will not have to assimilate or unite by erasing social identity and cultural differences. In fact, we will celebrate those together. The languages, the cultures, the way of living together that differ among us will be celebrated and respected and not colonized under the name of tradition or unity. This new thing will look and sound and feel very different. It will not be tweaked into change, but it will be a dramatic shift. So different, in fact, that those viewing it from the outside will think all of those of us who are participating in this thing have totally lost it. And we aren't even drinking that new wine. When we show up in these ways with our whole lives, we must try and recognize our part in the midst of this long unfolding story of God, a story that we call the sacred flow, the flow that contains all of our visions and dreams and gifts and talents, and yes, desire. And when we can do this, that wild and crazy spirit has something to work with. She requires willing people and open hearts and minds and room for creativity. Change is not impossible, but it does ask some significant things of us. The Spirit can make the impossible possible, but it won't happen out of nowhere. We have to become ready. Ready to use our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our resources, our energy, and all the other aspects of our lives. And we have to be open. This is the crux of it all. We have to be open to something wildly different. That's why I asked you the question about wild at the beginning. Because it's good for each of us to kind of get where we are on the wildness line and ask ourselves, how can we be more open to what the Spirit is doing? In the whole story of God, the point is always to be moving in the direction of love and liberation for all creatures and creations as we work towards the restoration of all things. It is for this reason that we long for new pattern, new ways of being together, new ways of thinking about church, new ways of working together for social change and for justice. The time of Pentecost was a time of radical change, of something new, of transformation in that community. It changed the trajectory of their shared future together, and it still shapes ours today. Thank goodness they were ready for it. Ready enough, anyway. This is being birthed through us. And even though there is a board meeting this afternoon, we cannot plan or meet or schedule or predict God's future actions. We can, however, predict and practice readiness for the Spirit, because sometimes God desires to do a new thing in us. The new thing may be personal to us or part of a collective reality. We may not always know about that thing in fullness, but we can make ourselves ready. I've thought a lot about Springsteen in the last few weeks. I don't know if some of you have heard of what he is doing in his concerts all over the world, but he's speaking up and he's speaking out. I guess I'm kind of in a rock star period of my life because the article from Bono in Esquire was an amazing article. That's your homework for this week if you haven't read it. And the one line that stands out to me is being angry is just not enough. The crisis has come to us in the last few days. And we all have to think about how we will respond to that. And we have to remember the old stories, because the old stories help us figure out what is ours to do. And what is ours to do is not the same for every one of us. I will never forget wanting so much to march in the George Floyd protests during COVID. And my husband and I had decided, we knew the route, we knew they were going to come really within a block of our house in Larchmont, and we had decided we would join the protest then. And by the time we got ready to do it, as it made that corner, it was a real free-for-all. And we knew that we couldn't do that. And it hurt my heart so much. In 2017, I think, after the election of 2016, we marched in downtown DC for the Women's March. My children were extremely impressed by the fact that I ended up on CNN. I was a little embarrassed, to tell you the truth. But it's not about getting your face anywhere. It's a matter of deciding who we will stand for and who we will stand with. And I would never suggest that you go to a march or to a protest. But I will tell you that if we are going to throw these doors even open wider and let the Spirit do what the Spirit does with our collective lives, we're going to have to figure out what we are going to do. And I can promise as we do that, that the ride will be wild. But I have to tell you, I can't think of a people I would rather be riding with in this life right now. Just like those beautiful balloons we released today that the children and youth shared with us this morning, we are rising, and we have to continue to rise together because we need that collectively. Our church needs that, our city needs that, our country needs that, and it becomes ever more apparent that our world needs that. May it be so. May it be so for all of us. Amen.